We want to welcome this esteemed panel discussion on higher educational leadership in trying times. It is my honor to stand before you today as we gather to explore and discuss the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for our education system. Today, we have gathered some of the most brilliant minds in the field of higher education who have had to balance their own personal identities as they've kind of gone up the ranks. They have dedicated their lives to shaping the future of education and have successfully led their divisions through turbulent times. Their insights and perspectives will undoubtedly inspire and guide us as we strive to create a brighter future for MSU. I encourage all of you to actively participate in the discussion. Your thoughts, questions, experiences are invaluable contributions to this gathering. By sharing our collective wisdom, we can generate creative solutions and forge a path forward towards a stronger and more resilient MSU. In conclusion, I would like to express my gratitude to each and every one of us, or one of them that are all, blah, blah, blah. Express my gratitude to each and every one of them on the panel today. Your presence signifies your commitment to the future of MSU and your dedication to ensuring that our students receive the best possible learning experiences, even in the face of adversity. Ted.
Thank you, everyone. I think I need to start off with a couple of confessions. When I was in K-12, right, K-12 school, especially by 5th or 6th grade, I was always wanting to make sure that I never went to the principal's office and I never wound up with the police. And now I'm in a room full of principals and the police at the same time. I've been trying to run away from principals and the police all my life. Guess I've been unsuccessful. Welcome to the College of K-12s, Sankofa. Thank you, officer. There he is, Dr. Jones. I want to make sure everyone sees it. Thank you very much. We are co-organizers. I just wanted to shout out to my partner over there. I want everyone to take a second and just take a deep breath. All right. What is really important, one of the takeaways impacting the future, based on the past. And this room that we're standing in, I don't know if any of you know this, but Malcolm X spoke in this room. Think about that. How many times have you ever been in the same spot where Malcolm X was? So one of the gentlemen who introduced Malcolm X in this room, we're going to play a clip from him in just a few seconds, but just across the street over here to the left, Dr. King spoke here on campus. So we are in a historical spot. We're going to start our clip off to help ground us. We're going to talk about a gentleman named Robert L. Greene. Just to give you some context behind the conversation, Dr. Greene was here in the College of Ed. He took a leave of absence to work for the SCLC under Dr. King. And during that time, he had a few experiences, and he likes to come back and share his knowledge. And that's the gentleman that we're going to have the first clip from. The next, we're going to have another clip by Antoinette Gandia-Bailey. She was a former member of Michigan State University. So after those two clips, we're going to have a little bit of a wrap up from those two clips from Joshua Gillespie from the University of Olivet. And follow that, we'll have a prayer by my good friend and colleague, Sean Holland. So thank you very much, and we'll get started with the clip.
John Hannah was worried. John Hannah, president of Michigan State, was publicly, and I believe honestly, committed to doing the right thing. And it was tense. When King when it was announced that night that King had been assassinated, I would say, Ted, within an hour I had several hundred black students, no whites, but all black. Whites might have been afraid, were at my house. And we were living, I think, on Duran or Bessemer Drive. They were at my house and they wanted to do something. So I was thinking fast. They said, we want to do it. And they were just really raising hell. So Bennet, B-U-R-N-E-T-T, was the police chief, and I knew him very well. I called him right away, and I said, would you clear the Union building for me for 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? I want to have a meeting with the students over the death of King. And he did. Well, I got there, good thing I did, because black students, a lot of black students were there early, and they were angry. And they didn't want any whites in the meeting. So I had to stand up before a group of black students, maybe several hundred, who were angry, who didn't want whites in the meeting. They said, we want to have this meeting among black folk to talk about the evil thing that whites have just did to us and to King and to the King family. So I finally got them to quiet down a little bit, and I said, look, they wanted to be an all-black meeting. And that's when I stood up and I said, no, it will not. I said, Dr. King believed in social justice for all, and he wanted blacks and whites to get along, and we're not going to shut white people out the meeting. So I encouraged them, and I had always had a few black students like Harold Bozier, who's now a medical doctor in Detroit, who would stand up, and my net, there were others there who stood up and supported me. He said, yeah, we have to abide by King and King's wishes, and he believed in social justice for all, so whites should be led in the meeting. That's how whites got in the meeting. And it was the Union Ballroom, and it was packed with black and white students. And we worked it out.
Thank you for that story. I have heard that the students wanted to burn MSU down.
Well, there was talk of that, but when they told me that, I said, wait a minute, you can't burn this place down. It's made out of brick. And one of them said, oh, he's right. It's brick. We can't burn it down. So it was just little things like that that you would say, or I would say, or one would say at the right time that would make sense to kids. But black students are hurt, very hurt.
In your ideal way of working, what would it look like? Monday.com?
Two questions to you. Can an adult be bullied? Do race issues still exist? Let's delve into the life of a woman who faced these issues head on. Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey, a woman of substance, an alumna of Lincoln University, class of 1998, and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Sorority Inc. She was a beacon of positivity, a woman who radiated love and generosity. But as she stepped into her new role as vice president, those close to her noticed a shift. A friend recounts a homecoming event where Antoinette's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Something was off. Something was hidden behind that radiant smile. This was a woman battling unseen forces, grappling with issues many of us can't even begin to comprehend. Her life, tragically cut short, leaves us with many questions. A beacon of positivity was dimmed, her smile hiding a tumultuous storm within. In the depths of severe depression, Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey found solace in words, her emails bearing testament to her struggles. These silent screams, encapsulated in the digital ink of her emails, revealed a harrowing tale of torment and despair. In these heart-wrenching correspondences, Dr. Antoinette laid bare the torment she faced at the hands of Lincoln University president, Dr. John Mosley. Her words painted a chilling portrait of a woman driven to the edge, subjected to relentless harassment and bullying, in a place where she should have felt safe and respected. Her pleas for assistance, born out of a poor evaluation, echoed in the void. They were pleas that were ignored, dismissed, unheard. A cry for understanding and support met with silence and indifference. And so, within the confines of her own emails, Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey chronicled her own tragedy. In her own words, she was harassed and bullied, a call for help that fell on deaf ears. The aftermath of Dr. Antoinette's tragic end has seen students rallying, their voices echoing her silent cries for justice. A wave of unrest has swept through the hallowed halls of Lincoln University, students demanding accountability from the very institution that was meant to protect its own. The focal point of their outcry? Dr. John Mosley. The emails written by Dr. Antoinette on that fateful day have become catalysts for change, sparking a movement that refuses to be silenced. The students have called for Mosley's resignation, a clear sign of their distrust in the leadership that failed Dr. Antoinette. The tragic incident has not only shaken the university, but has rippled through the larger community, forcing us to confront the painful realities of adult bullying and racial issues that persist in our society. Her voice, though silenced, continues to resonate, urging us to question the system that failed her. As we delve into Dr. Antoinette's life and struggles, we are forced to revisit our initial questions. Can an adult, even one as accomplished and radiant as Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey, fall victim to bullying? Does the shadow of racial discrimination still loom large in our society? These aren't rhetorical questions, but real issues that demand our attention. Dr. Antoinette, a beacon of positivity, found herself engulfed by a darkness that was fed by the very environment she dedicated her life to. Her cries for help went unheard, her pleas for justice unanswered. Now it's time to reflect. Are we, as individuals, contributing to this culture of silence and indifference? Are we turning a blind eye to the struggles of those around us because they don't fit into our preconceived notions of what suffering looks like? Are we treating others as we would like to be treated? It's time for a conversation. Dr. Antoinette's story is a stark reminder of the battles some fight in silence. Your voice matters in this conversation. So, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Together, we can ensure that stories...
Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Just like an angel sent from above. I never knew love could be making one as lovely as she. Bonnie, you were so lovely, made from love. I supervised Bonnie when she first got to MSU. Infectious smile, big personality, loud, could dress to a T. Loved AKAs, loved chicken, fried chicken. Matter of fact, the first paper she turned into me was late with chicken stains on it. Magnanimous spirit, provided support to all those she came into contact with. Your problem was her problem. Perspicacious, family atmosphere. She said, Jay, I want to be a VP. But really, she wanted to be a therapist for those who had suffered traumatic brain injuries. But because of her experience at MSU, she decided to be a VP. I said, no, you're going to be a president. Well, as long as you don't turn in papers with chicken stains on it. She got a dream job. But before she got there, she said, Jay, I got the PhD. Then she gonna say this, how you gonna encourage me to get mine and you don't have yours? Well, I said, I got paper, but it's the kind of paper that you hope your degree gets you anyway. We laughed about that. Then she got the job at Lincoln. And something changed. Something changed. I don't purport to understand how someone could feel so low to want to commit suicide. Because that's what she did. But I do understand what it means to have an unsupportive supervisor. I understand what it means to be told it's because I told you to do it. I'm the boss. I understand what it means to deal with daily microaggressions, racist undertones. I know what it feels like to have a public persona maligned by a private narrative, schemed for my demise. I'm still standing. Bonnie's gone. And as I close, because I was just supposed to honor Bonnie. Bonnie wanted me to tell you this. Don't allow any job to steal your joy. She said, tell them that there's better. That there's better. Don't get bitter, just get better. She said, tell them that I died so that you might live. Tell them, don't suffer in silence. Tell them that the toxicity of that environment can creep into your personal life. Tell them your setback simply sets you up for a comeback. Tell them if it quacked like a duck, it looked like a duck, it is a duck. Control won't be the answer. And so for all my supervisors, my message to you is you can hold people accountable. Just do it with grace. My message is, if you want me, accept me for all of me. Don't try to put me in a box. I'm black. I'm loud. I'm flashy. I'm confident. My shine don't dim your brightness. Bonnie said, I died so you might live. Tell your story. Tell your story. Get some help. And if the person that you're getting help from don't help, ask for some more help. So for anyone that's here, that's going through perhaps what Bonnie went through, get some help. On this amazing campus, there are many people who can help you. And if you don't know where to go holler at Dr. June. He's a real one. He's a real one. Holler at him. He can't change the outcome, but he can give you wisdom. She died so you could live. You are so lovely, May. From love, miss you, Bonnie. Blessings and favor.
It is an honor to be here today to share this space with you all. And in true African tradition, we're going to invite each of us to pray. And, there are many different definitions of prayer, but one of the ancient definitions that I love is a word that really means to draw near. And when we pray, we not only draw near to God, but we draw near to each other. I think it's very interesting. 20 years ago, we started a Bible study right here, and it grew into a global church with 8 Black students who said that they wanted safety. They wanted their voices to be heard. And they named that church the epicenter of worship. And so I stand today representing thousands of students who have come through this university, who maintain their spirituality, and they're fighting for justice all over the world. And so I wanted to say this before I pray also that my father would say, fleece of locks and dark complexion cannot fortune nature's span. Though skin may differ, affection dwells in black and white the same. Most people never heard Dr. King quote that. And we searched all over the world. Where did my father hear that? But it was in the archives at the MSU library that Dr. King actually quoted that in his speech here in 1962 or 3 when he was here. And so this is a very sacred moment that we've all been invited into. So I want to invite us to pray. Heavenly Father, we stand in awe of who you are and pause to reflect in this sacred place. We give thanks for the divine strength of those who have ran before us. We understand with great clarity that we are not the descendants of slaves, but the ascendants of great men and women, kings and queens. And so we stand today in the strength and honor of the sacrifices of those that we honor, of those like Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, Ella Baker, W.E.B., Nat Turner, Frederick Douglass, Gwendolyn Brooks, Sojourner Truth, Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Patrick Lyoya, George Floyd, and Dr. Bailey. We thank you for each of these panelists. We bless their stories and their experiences. We ask that we would honor and sit and reflect. Bless us to turn to wonder when we disagree and it seems that collaboration is threatened. Empower us today as a collective to forge a new future where all prosper and live in true community safety. In the name of Almighty God, my Savior Jesus Christ, we all say, amen.
Amen. Wow, that was a solid prayer. I didn't know we was going to have church this morning, but thank you. First clip about Dr. Green and campus climate and how he worked with the chief of police at the time to quell some of the student anger during Dr. King's assassination. So there's a history of the College of Ed and campus police working together. I think that's important. The second clip, Dr. Bailey. The bullying kind of hits home to everyone, but that's especially important to me because although it wasn't bullying, I had a student in one of my classes come to me and told me that she had been sexually assaulted. And I was angry. The first thing, what was going on, right? So I went through the procedure. I called campus police. I also had talked to a counselor. And I have to say, they walked me through the process. I can't describe to you how angry I was that someone like did something to one of my students. And so what I'm trying to get to, there's a history of campus police and the College of Ed working together. But I have personal experience, not just some of the friends that we have on the panel and friends in campus police, but I have experience going through the process of having to call and tell what happened to the student. And within, I would say, maybe 15 to 20 minutes from me calling campus police, going through the process saying that one of my students had been sexually assaulted, there was an officer in my office in 15 minutes. So I also want to thank campus police for being on top of that and also walking me through that process. Thought it was important to say that. Probably done listening to me. So we're going to transition to our panel discussion. I have to remember that there are so many folks in the room that have helped me along the way, and I appreciate you all. But because there's so many people that have helped me along the way, I have to do what I've been told. So we're going to transition to our moderator, Chief of Staff, Lisa Reeves. She told me that's all I should say. She said, make sure that, she's Chief of Staff and she handles the business of the College of Ed. I'm going to make one step further and say, she also is a mother of two. I could say a lot more, but I listen to Black women and I'm doing exactly what I'm being told. So without further ado, Lisa Reeves, our moderator.
Thank you, Ted. Wow. Good afternoon. It's Black History Month. We are in our Blackness, and we are in for a treat today. I have the honor and the privilege to moderate a panel of esteemed leaders. And with this panel, we're going to be discussing higher education leadership in trying times, leading from your cultural identity. As I was preparing last night and thinking about this, a scripture came to me, and that scripture was that people perish because of a lack of knowledge. We are fortunate today because these individuals, they're going to be sharing a snippet of some of their leadership experiences as they have traveled and they're in these positions. They bring to their positions experience, skills, knowledge, their cultural identity. These traits allow them in their leading to be creative thinkers, to be compassionate, to be bold, courageous, I would dare to say calm, have their bit of style, but they do their jobs as they collaborate, they model leadership, and they are strategic thinkers. Our panels today, in their Blackness, will share. So in introducing the panel, there's an outline of their background within the program. I'm not going to read all of that. It is some wonderful words. And I'm not going to read it because I want to get into what they have to share with us. As a little bit of housekeeping, we have about 40 minutes or so. And so please forgive me in not reading their bios that's listed. I just want to hear some of the things that they're going to share with us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Other than that, it's like I said, we're going to wrap up about 1:15 or so. And I have about a good handful of questions. They told me to stay to the script, but as I was reading, there was a few other questions and I thought we need to have some real talk here. So there's some other things I need to know. Not everyone has to answer every single question. So don't feel as if one question, I got to say my part too. Now there is one question that I want all of you to respond to, but the others as it's appropriate. So I'll just get started in terms of who do we have on our panel. We have Lee June. He's a professor out of the Honors College. We have Teresa Maston. She is the vice provost over in the provost office for academic affairs. Did I say that correctly? Okay, maybe I should read this because I want to do June. We have Christina Brogdon. Christina is the Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer for the university. We have Jabbar Bennet, who is the Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer. We have Marlon Lynch, who is the Vice President and Chief Safety Officer. You all will correct me when you talk about yourselves. And then, of course, we have Vennie Gore, who is the Senior Vice President for Student Life and Engagement. So I'm going to go ahead on and get started with our very first question. And actually, there should be two mics.
Right here.
Okay, perfect. I would like for each of you, okay, they're going to turn on my lapel. Okay, so let's do this. First question is, can you briefly describe your current position and what challenges did you encounter to actually obtain that position? I'll start right here with the gentleman.
Oh, you would start with me. So I serve as the Senior Vice President of Student Life and Engagement. And I think the question is what challenges that in terms of this, I can blame Lee because Lee was on the search committee chair back in 2007 when I was hired in as Assistant Vice President for Housing and Food Services at the time, which I consider myself an accidental vice president. I never aspired to be a vice president. I was never wanting to think that this is what I was going to do. And if it hadn't been for a gentleman by the name of Peter Rosenberg, I probably wouldn't have applied for this because he was the search committee consultant that was working with Lee. And he kept harassing me to apply. And so on the very last day, I did apply. And so, you know, I think I'm here because Lee is the one who was on the committee.
Is this in every person or is it? Yeah, this is it. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. I'm Marlon Lynch, Vice President and Chief Safety Officer here at MSU. And I'm in this role after, this is year 31 on the job. Specifically for this role here, this is my alma mater, my undergraduate alma mater, and CJ Major, all of that. But for me, it was an opportunity to come back and work on things that I saw were needed specifically for MSU. Having been here as a student, being a father of a student here as well, had some insight into some things. And part of what I've done, out of the 31 years, I've spent 27 years in higher ed with that. And prior to that, I worked locally as a police officer for Meridian Township Police Department. So I know a little bit about the area and what happens. And for me, it was an opportunity to contribute to what is here, but then also be collaborative, have the opportunity to be at the table, the decision-making component. It's one thing to have a position of leadership. It's different when you're at the table when decisions are being made. Not having a filter that's there so that the word or the communication is heard directly. And that's what's attractive for me at the vice president's level with that. It's a trend now for universities to go to that. That had not been the case. And so prior, as at the level of a police chief, it was more of taking what was sent from the senior leadership and putting in place. Having an opportunity to be part of the senior leadership is where the influence can actually make the difference. And so that was the attraction and how I ended up here.
Thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Jabbar Bennet. I serve as Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer here at Michigan State. And what my role entails is working with everybody on campus and off campus around anything and everything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I feel like a big part of my job is helping people understand that those are three very different things, but that they complement each other. And so I spend time doing that a lot. I think the other part was what was the challenge I faced in accepting or the role? Okay. Well, what I'll say, I won't say there were a whole set of circumstances around my arrival on campus, with the number one being COVID. So I joined in December 2020. And for the first 6 months of my job, I was working remotely. At the same time, I was trying to learn the campus, meet campus partners, my team, and build relationships. So I want to say that was a big one for me. And I don't think this next challenge is a negative one, but as I've done this work and served as a chief diversity officer at another Big Ten institution prior to coming to Michigan State, I know all the sort of logistical things that you have to do and then the things that I can do based on my own ability, attributes, and whatnot. But what I underestimated was the culture here. I couldn't understand the culture until I arrived. And it is a very loving and caring culture, but it's also a very complex culture in nature based on many factors, based on our history and based on the context of what's happened over time and what has happened to certain people over time on this campus, specifically Black people. So challenges do abound, but I deal with them every day. So those are just a couple.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Brogdon. I'm the Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer. I am responsible for about $2 billion of the university's assets, which are the people. The biggest challenge for me in coming here is that I'm different. I'm not conventional HR. And I was brought here to elevate the role of HR on this campus that historically sort of has a backseat to what's going on. And so I was brought here to not only have a seat at the table, but to set the table, because that is my vision for HR. We actually set the table for campus stakeholders. So to be different, to not be from around here. Been in the South all of my life. And when the recruiters called, because a friend of mine in Florida coughed up my cell number, and because I had answered the recruiters and said, no, I don't know anybody up there. Thank you. Pick someone else. I truthfully thought I was the diversity candidate. I thought they really were coming after me because I was the CHRO at the nation's largest HBCU. And all the universities had been coming after me. And I just thought, yeah, they just want me so they can say they want diversity. And so I took the opportunity and just thought I'd have some experience and knew that the answer would be no. And in meeting Dr. Melissa Wu, who brought me here, all the ways that I'm different is exactly what she wanted. And so to be here to swim upstream against a long history, it's been quite a journey, but I have assurance that I was brought here for a reason.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Maston, and I am the Vice Provost of Faculty and Academic Staff Affairs. Basically, what my job entails at a really large level is to think about one of the wonderful things of Michigan State. We will not bring someone as a faculty member or academic staff if we don't believe that you truly can succeed. But that looks very differently depend on where you sit. So it's very important if you think about in the context of health from cradle to grave, what does someone need to be successful from cradle to grave? And the health perspective is the same thing from the perspective of, think of it as academic HR. In that, that there's a responsibility that goes both ways, right? When you accept someone and say, you know, they can absolutely make it, but there's a part that the university has to do. So what I look forward to and enjoy most about this job is to make sure that win-win works, that people, that faculty and academic staff have what they need to succeed. And that's our responsibility to make sure that they have that, so that when they get to the point whether they're going to be promoted or whatever, that both sides of the equation really truly believe that we've done everything that we can to make it a successful relationship.
Yeah, my name is Lee June, and I'm kind of the outlier because I'm currently in the Honors College, but I'm probably up here because I'm in my 51st year at Michigan State, and I was in administration for 35 years. And so I serve a variety of administrative positions. So just briefly, what brought me here was back in 1973, I had 2 job offers on the table. One was at, I'll say, Florida State University, and don't laugh. And the other one was at Michigan State. So Florida State offered me $20,000. Michigan State offered me $14,000. And I came to Michigan State. And the reason I came, if I had gone to Florida State, I would have been the only Black faculty in the psychology department. And I knew at that point I needed mentoring. And when I came to Michigan State, I ended up meeting Bob Green, who was a dean, and Tom Gunnings, and Gloria Smith, and a variety of other Black faculty. And so they gave me the mentoring I needed. And so in 81, I became director of the counseling center. And then in '89, after the student sit-in, I was asked to become senior advisor to the provost for racial, ethnic, and multicultural issues. And briefly, the issue there, communication between student and administration had broken down, and they wanted someone to try to bridge those gaps. And then in 1992, Jim Hamilton stepped down and I became assistant provost. And then later on in 1994, the vice president for student affairs stepped down. And they wanted to try to merge student affairs and academic affairs. And so I served as vice president and associate provost for about 20 years. And then in 2010, I stepped down. And I'll say this briefly and I'll shut up. You know, there were two things, you know, my view is that you can stay in administration too long and you didn't, like Kenny Rogers said, you have to know when to hold it, know when to fold it, know when to walk away. And also the biblical principle, to everything there's a season. And I felt that I had done my season and people like Vennie, Gore, and these others need to step up and I'll watch them from the sideline.
Lee, thank you. Thank you for your wisdom. And we should know that. As I stated earlier, we perish for a lack of knowledge. And that's also sharing wisdom and having mentoring. So here's one of my next question. I would like to know, how does your cultural identity inform you as a leader and in making decisions? So we don't have to go in order here. Anyone who can provide some guidance, give us a nugget, I would love to hear from. I can call a person out too.
I'm not going to talk too much, but the cultural identity, for me, you know, having gone to Tuskegee back in the 1960s, you know, the things that they were doing then was saying, look, we need to train you and train you well as a Black person because opportunities that we're going to open up at these historically white colleges and universities. And so being Black and being part of the movement, I felt that coming and even serving in administration, it was kind of a calling and that it was an opportunity to bring about justice through administrative position. And then people talking scripture. I mean, there's another scripture principle that guided me. Jesus once said that, you know, that Christians are to be in the world, but not of the world. And so I kind of adjusted that principle to say that I needed to be in administration, but not of administration. And one of the things Black people face is that you can be easily co-opted. And then rather than relating to your people, you end up becoming a system person and a gatekeeper. And I wanted to make sure that I avoided that. And I'm quick to share this story. And I'm going to disguise it because I was once told by a major administrator, I was in this person's office, and he said, Lee June, you're a nice person, but you spend too much time with Black people. And I interpret that as a compliment. And one of the worst whippings you can get as an administrator is to go in administration and be co-opted, and then you can't go back to your own people. So cultural identity is very important.
Let me just say that I really appreciate. I think that is a very, very hard thing to do. For me, culturally, as someone who grew up in the Deep South, my parents were sharecroppers. My oldest brother was born in 1955. I was born in 1960. So if you think about 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, and yet I was the first child to go to an integrated school. So the layered complexity of the South, being Black, being a woman, the poverty piece is really huge. To be in a space like this where I feel, and I hope this isn't the case, but more and more in higher education, it is not a space where everyone can get there. And I feel that higher education has changed my life. And so therefore I have a responsibility to do absolutely everything I can to make sure that it's available to everyone. And the space that I live in, what I can do is never ever forget those experiences, how it felt, and make sure that the people that are here now, and I'm talking mostly about faculty and academic staff because that's my responsibility, that they have what they need to succeed wherever they are at the time. And I think this is in a way, the way I interpreted what Lee June said, how that relates to me. You have to never forget where you came from and who you are, but you also have to work with people where they are and help them get where you know and they know they can go.
Great. Gentlemen over here at this table have a comment? Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna go to the next question then. I'll go to the next question. And you perhaps can start with that one. Do you believe that you were called to leadership?
Do I believe I was called to leadership? If I reflect back, I would say yes. So, you know, I think we're also people of our upbringing. So my father and mother are South Carolinians. In fact, my mother grew up not far from where Lee grew up in Marion County, South Carolina. My dad grew up in Little River. He joined the Army in 1953. So if you sort of think about that time, he was one of the first African-American men in the intelligence agency in 1955. So it sort of shaped him, which shaped me in terms of thinking about what my identity was. And so earlier on, if I think back now to it, you know, I went to Department of Defense High School in Berlin, Germany. You know, at the time, I was the president of my student body and also an athlete, you know, that was recruited to play at Clemson, various different things. But it always seemed that for whatever reason, I ended up being in leadership roles. Not that I aspired to be in it, just sort of happened. You know, so I'm not quite sure how that happens. But if I reflect back, that has been, like, I didn't really aspire to come here. I didn't aspire to become the senior vice president of student affairs. It's just over time, responsibility came, and I'm not sure why, but it has.
I would say yes, I have aspired to lead. I come from a family of 6 Baptist ministers. Yeah, exactly. But I knew I wasn't going to be number 7. No, not yet, not yet. You sound like my great-grandfather. God's not through with you yet. So no, I just knew that I have friends today that cannot believe I do what I do, just in the capacity of how I grew up in Chicago, very much exposed to life in itself. And part of my desire to lead was not to be a negative result of what a city like Chicago can do to you if you simply follow. There are a lot of opportunities to simply follow. Not an option for me, not an option. I remember discussions early in my career with the chief of my police department about how he made it through the ranks and why. For me, again, I pay attention, I'm very aware to who I am, where I'm at, and what goes on around me. And there were things that I saw that needed to be improved with that. One way to do that is to lead. But when you have the opportunity to lead, what is just as important is to create those opportunities for those that you work with and who have similar desires as well. So not to be the only leader in what's going on. So create the paths for those who have similar desires, but at the same time, make sure that you're actively involved in what that looks like. And for me in our neighborhood, being friends with the police was not the thing to do, right? Not in most places, but specifically, definitely not in Chicago, because the intentions weren't always there with the police. But then also you didn't want to be associated with potentially snitching or doing things and things like that. However, we had a state trooper that lived in our neighborhood, Mr. Harris. And everyone knew, because Illinois, the troopers drive their cars home and they park them in front of their house and different things like that. And aside from playing ball, I have some friends who don't necessarily have the same career interests as I do. And we were getting into some things one afternoon after school, and someone had called the police, and the police were coming. Well, before I realized that the police were coming, Mr. Harris had me. And when the police got there, he said, "No, I've got this one." And I thought to myself, I'd much rather go with the police than go with Mr. Harris. Because I knew Mr. Harris knew my family, he knew everything and things like that. And besides that, Mr. Harris took me to his home, and he said, "Look, this isn't you. I know you're in it. You're a result of what's going on with it. This isn't you. Find your path, stick to your path, and bring people along with you." That's why I chose to leave.
Thank you. This is such rich discussion. And I'm going to move to the next question, and I'm going to ask Jabbar to answer this question. Earlier, when I was introducing and talking about you as the panelists, I was intentional. I was intentional when I mentioned about you bring your skills, you bring your knowledge, you bring your experience, your cultural identity, you bring your neighborhood. All of that you bring. Jabbar, tell us, how do you bring all of this into being the Chief Diversity Officer in terms of how you lead and make decisions and inform this campus?
Thank you for that very difficult question. Well, I'll say the job that I have is the job, right? The title I have is the one that goes along with the work that I do. But I think first, knowing who I am as a person, knowing who I am as a human, and understanding what my role is and what my responsibility is today in this context, in the role that I have, that's what keeps me focused. So you might see a lot of head shaking and nodding when anybody speaks about experiences, and that's because we do have shared cultural experiences. And I also appreciate your question, Lisa, very intelligent woman here, as we talk about cultural experiences versus racial experiences or cultural identity even. It's because of our race as Black people, let me speak for myself as a Black person, that I believe my culture has been sort of created, all those things around me that influence me. Often our race will dictate often where we live, the schools that we go to, how well-resourced those schools are, how well-prepared those teachers are, the things that we would have access to, the things that we could see and maybe not see, that we could dream for, aspire towards. So with that understanding who I am, the experiences of this broad community, also the experiences of the Black community that I share identity with, but being clear about what my role is to help everybody. But understanding who I am and the experiences of other groups has really helped inform me in the actions that I take, the conversations that I have with my colleagues to help them understand beyond the surface of the person what those experiences may be and how they do encourage behaviors that we might show up in different ways that we're not familiar with. So just walking in the knowledge of who I am. And then this last thing I'll say is that for all of us, we have many experiences, but knowing who we are, I think, has really helped to keep us in these roles, to help us strive and succeed. In my very brief part, I'll say, and I said this early on, and for those of you who were part of my sort of public talk when I was interviewing back in the fall of 2020, I was very clear to say, I'm the son of two historically Black college-educated parents, the grandson of a very entrepreneurial grandmother, my maternal grandmother, but also the great-great-grandson of enslaved Africans. And I knew my great-grandmother, who, as we say in the South, raised my father and his sister, but her grandparents were enslaved. adults. Her parents were enslaved, born into it as children. So helping people understand that connection and that context and sort of what drives many of us, hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Wonderful answer. So you mentioned about your maternal grandmother. This question is going to be for Christina, but it was something that you said, Jabbar, about your maternal grandmother. And it's those stories. You know, the stories shape us. We pass the stories down. Christina, you mentioned that coming here, you came here and you're at the table, but there's much ambiguity here in terms of what you're doing and your vision. Can you share with us, in the midst of ambiguity, how does that affect your leadership and how can you still be impactful?
Why you ask me a hard question?
It's real talk.
Actually, one of my strengths is to be able to see clearly through ambiguity. I'm an interpreter of ambiguous situations. I'm a strategist. I'm a mastermind. I can look at a situation and somehow I see it completely different than just about everybody around me. One of the gifts that I have is a gift of interpretation. And that is one of the challenges I have in this role, to take something that everyone thinks they understand what it is. Everybody thinks they know HR. We think it's just pushing paper. Of course, now we click buttons. And most people have no idea what it takes to be an HR professional, HR practitioner. And so many of the people on campus currently that work as an HR person aren't trained to do so. We'd never allow that in finance. We'd never allow that in IT. I hope we'll never allow that in public safety. It's rampant in HR. And so I have the challenge of going through and pursuing through the ambiguity of most of the people that are practitioners really aren't trained to do so. So to teach and to interpret in that, where I get that from, my father. He was a coal miner. So I'm a coal miner's daughter. I can sing it like Loretta Lynn. She was Butcher Holler. I grew up in Turnhole Holler. He was a foreman. He was a boss. And everywhere he would go, he always ended up being in a leadership role. He gave me that gift of administration, that ability to see and to strategize with others who were sitting here thinking, what is happening? And for me, I'm like, oh, well, it's this, and that. So I get it from him. And I also have the ability to feel. I'm thin-skinned. I can walk in a room and all kind of stuff is happening in the room and it pierces me. Now, earlier in my life, of course, that was not described as one of my finer traits. You need to toughen up. You need to be thick-skinned. And we're all quoting scripture, I'll be spiritual. I was in my 30s praying, asking God to make me thick-skinned for the umpteenth time. And it was one of those times I heard, you know how people say, I heard the Lord. I did. He said, if I wanted you to be thick-skinned, I would have made you that way. And it was that aha, because it arrested my tears. So this was like your bright idea. He gave me one of his most finer traits to be able to feel what you feel. It's actually one of the things we like about him, is that we can feel what he feels. I feel people. Why would I not be in HR? The grief, the struggle, the anxiety, the excitement. You know, when I meet new hires, when I try to recruit someone to come here, I can feel whatever their resistance may be. To talk to a person who may, like Dr. Candia Bailey, feel bullied, I can tell. I'm the one that you're supposed to talk to. And knowing that, and I've learned that, you know, years ago, I was the one you tell your troubles to. And so That's exactly who I need to be as the chief people officer. I'm the one MSU tells their troubles to. I'm the one that feels it, knows it, and I'm the one that pierces through the ambiguity to figure out a way to help us get through. There is nothing in that strategic plan that we can do without people. And so I get the fun part of the challenge is I get to help us figure out how to get there.
Thank you, Christina. I tell you, I'm listening to you and I think back to something that Jabbar said about knowing who you are. And that's for each of us, knowing who we are. And so being at Michigan State over the past, let's say 5, 7, 10 years, in the midst of chaos, not knowing what's going to be the next thing that we're going to read, the unknown, are you kidding me? How do you stay hopeful? This question is for anyone who would like to contribute and share. How do you stay hopeful in this current environment?
You hold this one. So this is how I do it. This hand is who I am, and this is what I do. I separate the two. Who I am is a husband, a father, a son. I have my congregation family. I have my friends. What I do is student life and engagement at Michigan State. I don't confuse the two. So in the midst of chaos, thank you, sir. In the midst of chaos, I cannot take it personally and keep it in perspective. This is the value of being a son of an intelligence officer, is keeping life in perspective. And so when things happen, having to know that it's not about me, it's not a reflection of me, but I have a responsibility to help others through that. And so helping others through that means is providing context. So what does this mean in the greater scope for what we do here at Michigan State?
I'll take that one. What gives me hope is that I have survived before and been able to thrive. I've been through a lot. One of the interview questions I got, and thanks to Jabbar, he was the chair of my search committee. They asked me, what makes you uniquely qualified for this job? And my answer was, because I'm coming here post Nassar. And I said to them, I know what it's like to wake up and your campus is in the news and it's not good. For those of you who do not know me, I worked at Virginia Tech during the Virginia Tech shootings, which to date is the largest campus mass shooting. I'm one of only 3 people in the world, as far as we know, to endure it twice. Coming here post Nassar, for me was, I know what it's like. And so, but I also know what it's like to get through it. And so it gives me hope. And one of the things I wrote in the missive they asked me to write post February 13th is I got to say, I'm acquainted with your grief. I know how it feels, but I know the triumph that comes when it's over. There is triumph in survival. That is a life mantra that I have. I learned it the hard way. But there is triumph in survival. I have hope for brighter days. I've seen brighter days. My today is a brighter day than many of my yesterdays. So that's what gives me hope, is to know that I have overcome, I have survived, and not only got through it, but get to a place of thriving. I get to sit here with all of this up here. You can do it. So that helps me.
No, I can't top that. I was just going to basically No, I agree with that. I mean, the other thing is a sense of history, and a lot of people, when chaos occurs, you think that's the only time it occurred. And so one needs to rely, there's a whole area called chaos theory. And, obviously out of chaos, unfortunately, comes progress. And, you have to deal with whatever you're dealing with, but you never lose hope. And you said it extremely well.
We're coming to the point where we're going to be concluding, but I don't want to end without any final words, any nuggets that you could share to the audience, whether it's in terms of you are an emerging leader and you want to get to positions such as yours, or just words of inspiration in terms of how to lead and keep balance. What final words would you share that we could take with us as we leave today? And it's not an everyone question, but anyone who would want to share. Thank you.
Just a few things. And I want to say, I think about leadership in that we all are leaders because we have to make our own decisions using the best information we have. And with that, I think the best thing all of us can do is be informed. I don't know if students are watching online and some are here in the room, but there's so much we don't know. There's so much you don't know. There's so much misinformation that people want you to hear and believe. Learn to think on your own critically, to read information, to decipher it, to talk amongst yourselves, because it's only when you have that clarity and understand the context within where many messages are coming from and what the why is behind that. Just need clarity, be clear, learn how to understand, read, comprehend on your own, and spend some time with your classmates doing some of that fact finding too. The decisions that this generation of students are making are going to impact society, laws for decades to come. So just understand that responsibility and the wonderful opportunity that you have to first lead yourself and then collectively help to lead others as well.
Don't want to omit a different type of leadership, right? So there's the leadership that we have collectively at the table with the appointment and the title and things like that. I'm going to embarrass him, but I saw him tip in here and I knew it was him by his walk. And that's Murray Edwards. I know he's back there. I saw him walk in here somewhere. Yeah. As a student, knowing that I had someone like that on campus, that is critical to be able to have that type of leadership as a student, but then also as you go throughout your career and you know that there's that level of insight. So those informal leaders that don't necessarily have title or things like that, but they have the knowledge, they have the love for the community and the resourcefulness and always being available. So that type of leadership exists here in Michigan State. That was just one. I know I'm one of probably thousands from Murray in that sense, from that level from back in the day, how we had that relationship. But that's one thing. I've worked at several universities and what MSU has to offer from that level of support is different. It's just different. So that level is needed as well.
I think the one thing that Marlon talked about is the notion of collective intelligence, and that having people around you and listening in, inviting in, and asking questions of others, so that there is a broader view. And I think that's the part of leadership that sometimes it's easy to get trapped in, that you have to be the person making all the decisions. And that's not necessarily the case. That there are really capable people at all levels of an organization in listening, inviting, and having participation is critically important to be successful as a leader. And so, we talk about being learning partners, because I learn from you and you learn from me. And that is, I think, the secret to everyone who sits at this table, is that we're all learning partners, and we all don't have all the right answers, but collectively we can come to a solution that works.
And I think it's important for us to always remember what leadership truly is. I think as a country and in the world right now, we are in a vacuum, but it's important to realize that leadership is all about service, right? So we may have titles, which means that there's a responsibility, but true leadership is about service. And that's what I love about all of these individuals at this table. They realize that and they lead primarily for the purpose for serving others in the greater good. And that's really all there is to it.
The advice I'd share for an emerging leader is to learn how to lead with your head, your heart, your feet, and your spine. Think, feel, move, act, and be strong in doing so.
Two things. One is to young people, I say, remember that you are not your position. You occupy a position. And, you know, when people start introducing themselves, really, I am the president. Well, you're in the position of the president for a period of time, and that will come and go. And this is, since it's a Black History Month, I hope people take this the right way. As people of color, I think as we move into leadership positions, although we have skills, we also have to ask the question, why sometimes are people choosing us? Because I think if you look at primarily white systems, they often have a job they want you to do. And that job may not be the job that's in the best interest of the people you're serving. And you have to kind of balance those things and make sure you know why you're in leadership, what your goal is, and how do you do that. That's a tricky thing, but it can also get you into a lot of difficulties.
Jabbar, did you want to say anything, or are we? Okay, well, wonderful. I told you we were in for a treat. We got so many nuggets of just great stories. I thank each of you. I thank each of you where you are leading in times where you often may feel like you're not noticed, where the challenges are nonstop. There are extensive hours. I say thank you. I say thank you. We appreciate your presence in spaces where we are not. You are a face and you are a voice for the voiceless. And we say thank you. We know that the only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. Thank you. Congratulations for the positions that you hold now. And in this Black History Month, you do make history. Thank you.
Maybe
Yes,
we ought
please,
to just
please.
give thanks to Marlon because he's going to be leaving us. So could we recognize him, and maybe you can tell people who don't know where you're going, but we appreciate your time.
Well, thanks, Dr. June. Dr. June was another one I leaned on as a student as well. And I know his eyes got sort of big too. You do what as a profession? No, but it was after a lot of thoughts and prayer, actually. Yes, no, but just quickly, it's I made a decision to leave. I will be going to the University of Colorado at Boulder, in same position there. I will be leaving at the end of the month with it. There's actually more than Coach Prime in Boulder, but he is there. He is there, and looking forward to working with him as well and what he's doing for the community there. But this was a great opportunity for me. This is my second home with that, but will be left in good hands. There are a lot of people here from police and public safety that are more than capable to step up and continue what has been put in place. So thank you for everything. Definitely appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming. That concludes our program. I want to give a shout out to my boss, Dr. Brian Beverly, for helping us navigate this and helping sponsor this. I also need to thank Dean Austin. We really appreciate you coming, and all of you for joining us on a Saturday where there's a million things to do, but we were happy that you came to share with us today. If we can give another round of applause to the panelists. Thank you.